And then we're starting a new series. I'm excited about this one. It's called A Weary World Rejoices. And as we kind of go into the holidays, especially, we're going to dive into some things that I think are helpful all the time, but I think it'll be especially helpful kind of in the here and now as we enter into the holiday season, interacting with family and connecting that way. And what we want to focus on is really this. We said, in a world that we largely don't have control over, how do we find peace and joy in the middle of it? Right? When I'm going to interact with maybe in relationships or interact with people, I don't know what they're going to say. I don't always know what they think of me. Right? And how do I find myself in a situation where I'm continually finding joy and finding peace in the middle of that, right? That's the question. And what we're going to do as we begin to dive into that answer is I think we're going to find an enormous amount of practical, real help. One of the passions of mine for this series especially is I want us to be able to see how practical and real our faith is. That it's not just some like out there feeling that we have sometimes. It's not just a one-time decision that just stays kind of in the past and doesn't affect our current reality or everyday situations. I want us to see how real following Jesus is in the everyday, in the difficult, sometimes in the deeply frustrating. And I want us to know that God intends for us to find him, and he wants to help us in the middle of all that stuff, right? In the mundane, in the frustrating, even in the chaotic, he is there with us, and he's going to help us find our way to joy and peace if we take him up as an invitation. So we're going to dive into a passage of Scripture that I love. It is loaded, right? It's just one loaded section of Scripture, and we're actually going to be here for the whole series. We're just going to kind of break it apart one piece at a time, and camp out here. We'll of course go to other passages as well, but this is going to be the main one. So maybe if you have a Bible with you and you want to follow along, you can do that. If you have YouVersion or something you want to read along, or you can just read it on the screen here. Let me read the whole passage, and then we'll begin to break it down a little bit. Here's what Paul says from jail. He's writing the letter to the Philippians, and here's what he says in chapter 4. He says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." I will say it again, rejoice. He says, "Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God." So he's going to load it with info and things that we can do to access God here in the middle of it. He goes on and says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." He says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, and whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you." Now, again, like you said, we're going to dive into this over a series of weeks. What I want to do today, though, is begin to build kind of a way to see this passage and a way to get kind of the first step to understanding how do I grab hold of peace and how do I grab hold of joy in the middle of my life. I want to make sure I'm kind of have the right frame to see this with. Otherwise, I think we're going to misunderstand how it works. But part of what Paul's doing from a jail cell in the middle of situations and circumstances that are very imperfect, right, is he's helping us understand the path to finding joy and peace in the middle of kind of deeply imperfect situation and circumstance. And here's what I want us to do today as we begin to understand this. Want us to understand a little bit of how I think this works, and we have to get this part first, right? When I think about my life and what I'm responsible for, there are some things that I'm deeply responsible for, and really at the end of the day, I'm accountable for. And there are some things that I can influence, but I'm not responsible for them, although often in life it feels like I am, right? Let me walk you through a few of those things, right? We're just going to get some high-level, big picture stuff out here. Let's talk about the things that we're not responsible for. right? Specifically, we're going to talk about other people and like what other people say and right what other people do. Right? I can't respond. I can't take ownership for what other people say or do or feel about me, how they view me, and we're going to tend to put a lot of energy thinking about what do other people think about me. What are they going to say? What are they going to do? How are they going to act? When I go to Thanksgiving, is my crazy family member going to throw the bomb in the middle of the room about politics and we're going to watch it all explode? Right? That never happens, right? We all see that stuff play out. Is my crazy uncle going to say that one thing that I know my mom's going to freak out about, and all of a sudden there's going to be an explosion, right? And we can feel even feelings of anxiety even as we get ready to go to Thanksgiving or Christmas, and how do I deal with that? I can't control somebody, what they're going to say or do. What's my response in it? Here's another one. I'm just going to use a huge bucket we're going to call world events. World events. This is kind of like all the stuff that happens out there in the stratosphere, right? There's all kinds of stuff that is happening and may or may not have an effect on me that I can't control it. I can't control if there's World War III. I can't control if the stock market crashes. I can't control even if there's layoffs at my job oftentimes. I might be able to have some influence on some things if I have actions to take, but in general, there's a whole bunch of stuff out here that I can't actually control. Not only that, we could even dive deeper into our own lives, and I can't even control stuff that's in my past, right? If things that have already happened in my life, I don't have the ability to time travel and go back and redo a situation and make it right. I also don't have the ability to go forward into my future and guarantee an outcome or fast forward where I am into where I want to be and live that portion of my life. All I can do, right, and there's probably 1,000 other things we could put on this board. All I can do is live currently in the present. Now, right, you're a thinking person, you're probably going to ask this question, but aren't there lessons back here in the past that I can look back at the past and derive lessons from what I've been through. I can do that currently, and that would be a good thing. But I can't control the past. I can't go back and undo decisions that were made. I can't pick up priorities that should have been picked up but weren't. I also can plan for the future or make decisions today that could potentially affect my future. But I can't control what happens in the future. I can't guarantee it, right? I can only make decisions that affect, that are made in the present, where I am in the here and now. And this is what Paul's kind of driving at, is he's saying, you and I have decisions that we have the beautiful privilege of being responsible for. Here's some examples. He would look and say, rejoice, pray, be thankful, think about these things. And what he's pointing to are these are things that we can respond to. Here's what we are totally responsible for. Here's one example. My attitude. You and I are 100% responsible for how we view a situation. No one made us see it that way, right? Nobody can say or do anything to make me choose a specific attitude. There may be an impact on me, but at the end of the day, I am responsible for my response. As a person, as a human being made in the image of God, I have this beautiful privilege and a beautiful honor and responsibility where I get to be in charge of my response, of my attitude, of my actions, right? Of the things that I do and decisions that I make. These things are 100% within my realm of responsibility. Even the things that I think about, my thoughts, I'm not sure every single thought we have is our responsibility, but what I choose to do with them, like Paul said, to think about such things is up to me. Right? It's not something we think about all the time. We don't tend to think about what we're thinking about. Right? We don't tend to get above our thoughts and look at them. But the reality is I'm responsible for it. If I'm obsessing over things out here in the past, in the future, in the world events, or what other people might or might not be saying or doing or thinking about me, that's actually my decision. I may not know that it's my decision, but it's completely my responsibility to choose to put my energy and my focus, here's another one, my focus on those things, right? I am the one here, this is beautiful, I am the one who gets to choose what I focus on. I find that this is the battle of my life right now, is there are so many distractions that so powerfully make their way into our lives that the fight for my focus is a battle to the death, right? You feel it, I bet you, I feel it for sure. And then we could probably put more in here, but I'm going to just write the word time. Right, I'm responsible for of course, how I spend my time. Another way to say how I spend the present. Now, this isn't everything. This isn't everything, of course, but this gives us a ballpark of how to start to think about how I find joy. Now, this is the key. Right, the first step in finding joy in chaos is to get clear on what I can and cannot control. I can't control this stuff. I can't carry it. I'm not responsible for it. What I am responsible for, what is mine to carry, is in this bubble right here, right? Am I responsible to love people? Yeah, I'm responsible for my response. Am I responsible to maybe think about the future and plan for it in a healthy way that I can take real action? Sure, of course. Am I responsible to reflect on the past and to forgive or do whatever you got to do to work through it? Absolutely. Am I responsible to maybe as a citizen play a role here? Okay, yep, but I can't go back and live here. I can't move forward here. I can't own and be responsible for what other people say or do. I have to realize that this right here is when I start to understand it, this right here takes so much energy that by the time I get done being faithful with this part, there's nothing left to spend out here. By the time I've put my thoughts and my focus and the right decisions, the right responses, and I've chosen the right attitude that's about all I can handle is me. And often I can't even really do that. Right? I was thinking about this week. I had this tree fall in my yard. It was windy, right, earlier this week, and I think it was Monday or Tuesday, came home and saw a big tree down in my front yard. In a busy week, every time I drive out of my driveway, I look at that tree and think, I gotta clean that tree up, right? I gotta cut it up. Half excited about it because I get to use my chainsaw, right? But I often feel like, man, I gotta get to that, and I don't have time to get to it. So I had like this one slot of time, this one little chunk of time that I had allotted to go clean up the tree, right? So I got my chainsaw, got it fired up, started working on it. It was fantastic. All right, I began to chop the tree up, clean it up, and I got about halfway in the chainsaw breaks, right? Right? Yeah, exactly, right? No, that's how I felt, right? And I start to have that moment. You guys all, I'm positive you all experience this, right? Where you get that moment, you're like, you got to be kidding me. This is the time, right? This is the time allotted to fix this, and now I got to go into the next allotted time where I'm going to be able to get to it later, and I don't have any of my leaves done, so now my leaves are going to get pushed back because I haven't, right? This was the tree time, next was going to be the leaves time, now I got 2 tree times, then I get to the leaves, I'm frustrated, my goal is blocked, right? And then I'm getting a little upset, and then I start to think to myself, this conversation I'm going to have with you lovely people, right? And I think, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm responsible for how I respond right now. And I think if I don't get a hold of this, I can be grumpy, and the people around me can experience my generalized grumpiness the rest of the day, right? I've done that before. I can, if I want to, I could choose a couple different options now, right? I could look and say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in the towel, go do something different. I can go be productive somewhere else, forget the tree for the day, come back with a fixed chainsaw and hit it then. I could do the grumpy option, like I said. I could also just clean up what I've already done, and that's probably what I have time to do. And I was like, you know what? I have the freedom and power to make this decision. It was beautiful. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to clean this up. And I start doing it, and you know what I felt? Joy. Right? I was frustrated, and because the words of God helped me redirect what was going on in me. I can't control, I'm going to just put chainsaw, right? I can't control my chainsaw. I can't control this situation right now. But what I realize is I have a decision I can make on how I interact with this moment. And guys, it was beautiful. It was an awesome moment. It turned around, right? It was great. I started cleaning up all the branches and the trees and blah. I was like, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a workout. It was I got 800 calories burned. I was like, this is productive. This is good. I watched this hawk chase this squirrel in my yard. And it was swooped right down in the middle. I'm grabbing some branches, and I see the hawk and the squirrel. I heard the scurrying, and I watched it all play out. And I was like, National Geographic in my yard. I was like, this is amazing, right? And now I'm walking away, right, with a good sweat and a good workout, and I made progress. I didn't have everything done that I wanted to have done, but I was able to find joy, not because I'm a good guy, but because God redirected my heart and helped me to see, hey, Ryan, hey, this is I'm going to give you the freedom. By the power of my Spirit, I'm going to give you the freedom to choose what kind of attitude you have. This terrible attitude you have right now about your chainsaw and this moment, you can make a decision to change that. You can have a different response. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for helping me to see your creation and to see an opportunity, to see that I get to do this. I get to have a yard where there's a tree that has fallen, and I can find a place to say thank you. Left to myself, I'm gonna turn that into a negative. I'm gonna turn that into a frustrating situation. It's gonna kind of eat my lunch all day. Guys, you know how this goes. This is where we live. And when we think about Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, we think about going to hang out with the family. I'm guessing there's probably people going to be there, and you have an idea maybe of what's going to be said or what's going to be done. Maybe you don't, and there might be feelings of anxiety about that, right? You can't control that. I can't control it. What we can do is we could go into that moment and say, you know what? I'm going to choose where to focus. I'm going to choose to pray before I show up. That's something that I can do. I'm going to choose beforehand that I'm not going to respond no matter what crazy Uncle Jimmy says, right? No matter what that crazy family member says, I'm not taking the bait. I'm not going to engage. I'm going to show up and I'm going to be a blessing, right? So those of you who are named Jimmy, I'm sorry, right? I just looked at a Jimmy and just thought that, right? Like no matter what I'm going to do, I'm going to show up and I'm going to choose to view this the right way. Guys, this is a struggle for all of us. Right, to stay in it, there's so much energy burnt. Putting my focus, my attention on what someone else might do or say, how they might think about me. Stuff out here I don't have any control over here. Regret that I can't, right? Stuff that's, I don't have any business trying to run the world. I have a hard time running myself. And God would look and say, here's a beautiful privilege that you have. You have far more control than you think you do, because the reality is no one and nothing can take your joy from you if you choose to retain it. And here's the reality. There are decisions that we can make that can make God and the God of peace feel close, and my experience of him feel real. And there's decisions that we can make that make him feel far and make his peace feel murky and hard to grab hold of. He doesn't change. He's the same. But this is what Paul, just to remind us, this is what Paul told us, right? As we do all these things, rejoice and pray, it says the God of peace will be with you. The God of peace will be with you. When I grab hold of the things that I can be responsible for, and I involve God in them, I find ways to be thankful. Even in the midst of frustration, God is with me, and where God is, his peace is. The God who creates joy, right, helps me to experience his joy and his peace as I own the parts that I can own. And what I love about this is both deeply freeing and deeply empowering. It's deeply freeing and it's deeply empowering. Here's how I think of it. Right, what I want to do is I want to focus on faithfulness and I want to release the rest. I want to focus on faithfulness and I want to release the rest. Right? Can I plan for the future? Sure. Make some investments, take care of your health, and no, I can't control what happens in a day, let alone a decade or multiple decades. I'm going to release that. You know who's in charge of the future? The Lord is. I want to do my best to be a blessing to other people, to pray. But I can't control even the people that are directly around me, what they say or they do or they think or they feel about me or how they interact or the choices they make. I want to do my part to love, and then I want to release. Guess who's these people? You know who they were accountable to? The Lord, not me. And this is not mine to carry. My part to carry is in this bubble right here. I want to focus on faithfulness. What has God called me to do? I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a pastor. Just doing those parts is going to take absolutely all that I have. I don't have any energy left to try to run the world with it. Right? You might have some left over. I don't have any left. And what the Lord would look at you and I and say is, hey, I've called you some stuff. What you have going on in your heart and your mind, I want you to realize, I want your awareness to grow so that you can let go of the stuff that is burying you, making you feel anxious out here because you're trying to control something that's not yours to control. And in the meantime, this stuff is neglected. Feel it? I feel it. Here's the thing about this, guys. There's no arrival point here. I can't look at you and say, like, I read this passage and now I have this all figured out. It is a real work in progress that I'm in the middle of every day. If I'm aware and awake enough to be in the middle of it. Just being honest. Here's the beauty, is the Lord who created us and knows us and loves us would look at us and say, guys, I want you to experience joy. I want you to experience me and my peace. And when you start to feel and understand how empowered you are, that no one makes you do anything. No one makes you respond that way. They said that thing, and that's why no, you just did it. You chose to do it. Well, I did this because my parents, I was raised this way, and now Those might be real reasons why you have a propensity to move in a certain direction. And the good news is, now those are real decisions that you have to decide, do I want to keep making those or not? This is beautiful. All right, there is joy here. There is freedom here because in the midst of all this, faithfulness here helps me to release this stuff because I realize I don't have any room to carry that. By the time I start carrying all the things that God has entrusted me with, there's just no room for the rest, right? I can trust a God who has it and even ask a God to help me in the middle of carrying my stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give an answer to the Lord for this, right? It's beautiful, it's empowering, and it's the way that joy works, right? I think we have a tendency to think joy and peace is like an arrival point, right? Like once I get through this part of my life, then I'm going to have joy. When I graduate from college, when I graduate from high school, when the mortgage finally closes on the house, then you're not going to have joy. You're just going to have a house, right? You're just going to have a house with house problems now, right? The reality is we tend to think that there's an arrival point, and once I hit that arrival point, that I'm going to find real and lasting joy, right? When I retire one day, right? Those of you who are retired, is that how it works? Is there joy after that? Well, there might be, right? Right? The reality is it's not like that. It's not an arrival point, and once you cross a threshold, then you have it hereafter. Here's how it is. Here's how joy and peace work. Joy and peace are chosen on a moment-by-moment basis in the midst of imperfect circumstances. I'm going to say that again. I didn't put it in your notes. This is the heart of it. Joy and peace are chosen on a moment-by-moment basis in the midst of deeply imperfect circumstances. That's just how it is. Right? That is wonderful when I start to realize that my experience of peace and joy is within my realm of responsibility to choose. I don't need anybody to grant me joy. God's already done that. I don't need anybody to grant me peace. I don't need a government to do that. I don't need a job to give that to me. I don't need my parents to do that. Paul's doing it from jail. Right? I'm certain that Paul's like, hey guys, I've had a lot of time to sit and think about this. Let me help you understand how this works. While I'm locked up here, what I start to really realize is how little I control out externally and how much control, how much responsibility and possibility I have to determine these things. I get to choose if my life is a get to or a have to. Right? Is this day a get to or a have to? Is this a chore or a privilege? Right? Is this a problem or an opportunity? Is this something that God has gifted me and I can find a way to thank Him for it or rejoice in Him? Even in the midst sometimes of deep pain and tears, we're able to find it. Most of our lives aren't lived there. They're often just lived in low levels of frustration. The traffic jam, the annoying conversation, that person that I tried to avoid, but they found me anyway. Right? You have them. I know. Some of you are like, am I the annoying person to Ryan? Right? You'll never know. Right? We all have that stuff. In the middle of that is where we're choosing. It's where the choosing happens. When Paul says this, I love it in this verse, says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Since as members of one body, you were called to peace. He says, and be thankful. Right? Loaded passage. The peace of Christ can rule in us. How does that happen? When I allow it to. By releasing that which isn't mine to carry. And owning owning the parts that I can carry, choosing to focus on a God who's good and a God who is trying to meet me in the middle of my day over and over and over again. I love this prayer. I have used this before. I'm sure I'll use it again. It's so fitting. It's exactly what we're talking about. It's called the Serenity Prayer. I would love for us to pray this throughout the week. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Right? Lord, help me accept that I don't own this. You own it. Right? Help me to change what I can change in here. If my focus or my thoughts or my response, nobody's going to come into my heart and mind and make me do that. The Holy Spirit can bring things to my mind. I have to choose whether I want to lock into this or not. That God's not going to make me choose a different attitude. He'll help me see a new way, and then I have to make a decision, do I want to engage that or not? What's awesome is that we have the ability to do it. We have the deep privilege to have that show up. I'd love for us to pray this even throughout the week. And then here's a challenge I'd like us to walk into throughout this series. I would love for us to memorize this passage, right? It's not that long. And even if you're somebody who is not a memorizer, you're like, Ryan, I really struggle with the memorizing part. I don't care if you ever get this word for word perfect. Doesn't matter. Here's what's going to happen if you work at it. As you work at it, as you direct your thoughts to the passage, rejoice in the Lord always, what's going to happen is that's going to direct your focus, right? And now instead of playing block blast, you're going to think, hey man, how do I focus on what God is saying to me here? How can I rejoice in what God is doing right now? How do I respond better? It's going to start to bleed into be thankful, right? Don't be anxious, but by prayers and petitions, action, right? And that's going to start to direct and change my life as I work at memorizing that passage. The memorizing isn't even the point, really. It's the working at it. It's the reading it 50 times a day, thinking about it, praying through it, getting my heart and my mind redirected to it over and over and over again. I love it. I love that this breaks us out of getting trapped in thinking that we are a victim. It helps us see that God has looked at us and said, if you're a follower of Jesus today, you're a child of God. And he would say, I want my children to take ownership for who they are, for how they love, for how they approach life. We have the ability to do that because of how God has made us and because of what Jesus has done. I would love for us to even think this way coming out of this conversation. Right? In a minute, I'm going to have the band come up and we're going to sing and worship and spend a little time together. Okay, this can be the part, guys, at the end of the service where the singing happens. Right? It's just another Sunday, or this can be a little moment where I decide I'm going to personally interact with God right now. Where I decide I'm going to pray, God, thank you that we get to gather here in a space that's provided, in a place where there's no real fear of persecution. And we can gather with other Christ followers and sing with joy. See, in this moment, we get to choose how we show up, where our heart is. And here's the thing that I keep coming back to over and over and over again. That I can't live any other moments. I can live in this one. This is the one that I can give back to God. And it's in the present that I can do these things. Can't go back and undo what happened a week ago. Can't guarantee it's going to happen in a week ahead. but I can be with God in the here and now. Guys, as the band comes out, would you bow your heads and close your eyes with me? We'll sing and we'll worship together. Lord, we want to say thank you today that you open our eyes to the freedom and even the power, God, that we get to have because of how you've made us. That we're fully accountable and fully able, Lord, to choose you, to worship you, to think differently about our days and our moments and our interactions. God, I pray you'd help us with this. Help me with this, Lord. As we get lost in distraction, as we get drawn away to thinking about things and focusing on things that we have no reason and no business carrying. God, help us to see that you want us down a path of joy. You want us to walk a path of peace where you are, owning what you have given us to own, opening our hands and releasing the rest to your care, to your control. Lord, would you meet us in the middle of these moments, right here, right now?